Hey there, nightmare junkies. What's up? I'm about to blow your minds with something that'll make you think twice about ever setting foot in a hospital again. And trust me, this isn't some made-up creepypasta garbage you find on Reddit. This actually happened to me. My name's Jessica, and I'm a registered nurse here in Ohio. 3 years ago, I took a job that nearly destroyed my life. Tonight, I'm finally ready to talk about Room 209. But before we dive headfirst into this absolute madness, smash that subscribe button and ring the bell. Seriously, the Nightmare Network is dropping fire content every week, and you don't want to miss what's coming next. If you're already part of our crew, you know what time it is. Grab your favorite snacks, turn off those lights, and let's get into some real horror. So check it out. Fall of 2021, I'm fresh out of nursing school at Ohio State, drowning in student loans like every other millennial trying to make it in this economy. The job market was brutal, but Riverside Medical Center was offering crazy money for night shift nurses. Like, suspiciously good money. Red flag number 1, but hey, I had bills to pay and ramen noodles were getting old. My first night, the charge nurse, Deborah, pulls me aside. She's this no-nonsense woman in her 50s who looks like she's seen every type of medical drama you can imagine. "Listen up, rookie," she says. "Room 209 is completely off limits. It's been closed for renovations since before you were born. That door stays locked, no exceptions." I'm thinking, okay, standard hospital stuff. Old building, asbestos removal, whatever. But there was something in her eyes when she said it. Fear. Real, genuine fear. The first couple weeks were chill. I was working the cardiac unit, dealing with post-op patients, medication rounds, the usual grind. Night shift was actually pretty sweet. Good money, less drama than days, and I got to listen to podcasts while charting. But around week 3, I started noticing weird stuff. Every single night at exactly 2:17 a.m., and I mean exactly, I'd hear footsteps coming from the direction of Room 209. Not random building noises, not the HVAC system settling. Footsteps, clear as day, back and forth, like someone pacing. When I mentioned it to my buddy Tyler, this cool dude who'd been working nights for 5 years, he just laughed it off. "Bro, it's an old building," he said. "You'll get used to all the random sounds. Pipes, heating system, the foundation settling. Give it a month and you won't even notice." But I knew what I was hearing. These weren't random noises. Someone was walking around in that supposedly empty room. After a month of this nonsense, my curiosity finally got the better of me. It was a quiet Thursday night, skeleton crew on duty, and I decided I was done wondering. At 2:15 a.m., I crept down that hallway like I was sneaking out of my parents' house in high school. Room 209 looked exactly like every other room. Same beige paint, same generic hospital door. But something felt off about it. Wrong. There was this "Do not enter maintenance" sign hanging on the handle. But I didn't see any construction equipment, no plastic sheeting, nothing that screamed renovation. 2:17 a.m. hit like clockwork, and those footsteps started up again. They were coming from inside the room. I pressed my ear against that door, and y'all, I got goosebumps all over. The steps were slow and deliberate. Shuffle step, like someone wearing those grippy hospital socks, dragging their feet slightly. Back and forth across the room, never stopping, never changing pace. I tried the door handle, locked tight. "Jess, what the hell are you doing down here?" Tyler's voice scared me so bad I literally jumped and almost screamed. Dude appeared out of nowhere like a ninja. "I heard the footsteps again," I whispered, pointing at the door. Tyler looked at me with this mix of concern and pity that made my stomach drop. "Girl, there's nobody in there. That room's been empty for over 2 years." "Then explain what I'm hearing." He got quiet for a minute, then sighed real heavy. "Come on, you need to hear the real story about room 209. We went to the break room and Tyler poured himself some of that terrible hospital coffee. When he finally started talking, his voice was all shaky. 2 years ago, we had this patient named Vernon Blackwood in room 209. 72 years old, came in for a routine bypass surgery. Everything went perfect. Textbook operation, smooth recovery. But on his 3rd night post-op, something went seriously wrong. Tyler paused, staring into his coffee cup like he was seeing something terrible. The night nurse found him at exactly 2:17 a.m. He was standing at the foot of his bed, facing the wall, completely motionless. She called out to him, but he didn't respond. When she touched his shoulder to turn him around, Tyler shuddered. His eyes were completely black, not just the pupils, the entire eye, black as tar. I felt ice water running through my veins. He grabbed her wrist and whispered something that made her scream so loud, security came running from 3 floors away. She never told anyone what he said, but after that night, she quit nursing entirely. Last I heard, she moved to Florida and works at a dog grooming place. What happened to Vernon? Here's the thing. By the time security got there, he was back in bed, sleeping peacefully. Vitals normal, eyes normal, acting like nothing happened. Next morning, he had 0 memory of the incident. Seemed totally fine. Tyler took a sip of coffee, but his hands were shaking. But every night at 2:17 a.m., same thing. Standing at the foot of the bed, facing the wall, those horrible black eyes. Different nurses each time, but same result. They'd all quit within a week. Finally, administration moved him to the ICU. Did the episode stop? Yeah, but Tyler glanced toward the hallway. The footsteps started the night after he left. Every single night at 2:17 a.m. Maintenance has been in there probably 50 times. They've checked everything. Floors, walls, ceiling, plumbing, nothing. But those footsteps just keep going. What happened to Vernon? Tyler's face went pale. He died 2 weeks after discharge. Heart attack in his sleep. But here's the creepy part. The coroner found something weird. His feet were completely raw, like he'd been walking nonstop for days. His hospital socks were found at the foot of his bed, soaked in blood. My stomach dropped. You think he was still walking, even at home? I don't know what to think anymore. After hearing that story, any rational person would have transferred departments or quit. But I've never been accused of being rational. Something about room 209 had gotten under my skin. I needed answers. The next night, I came prepared. I'd borrowed a master key from maintenance. Don't ask how. And brought my phone to record everything. If weird stuff was really happening in that room, I was going to document it. At 2:10 a.m., I positioned myself outside room 209. The hallway was dead quiet, other nurses busy with their rounds. I slipped the key into the lock just as the hospital's old clock system chimed twice. 2:17 a.m. The lock clicked open right as the footsteps began. I pushed the door open slowly, my heart hammering like a techno beat. The room was pitch black except for the hallway light behind me. Standard setup, hospital bed, monitors, small bathroom, nothing unusual, except for the footsteps. They were happening right in front of me, clear as day. I could hear the shuffle of socks against linoleum, the slight squeak of rubber grips. But there was absolutely nothing there. I pulled out my phone and hit record, then stepped into the room. The temperature dropped instantly, like winter in Minnesota cold. My breath came out in clouds and frost started forming on the window. The footsteps stopped dead. The silence was worse than the sound. I stood frozen in that doorway, every instinct screaming at me to run. That's when I heard it. A voice, raspy and tired, like someone who'd been coughing for hours. She shouldn't have come here. I spun around, but the hallway was empty. When I turned back to the room, there was a figure standing at the foot of the bed. Vernon Blackwood. He looked exactly like Tyler described. Elderly man in a hospital gown, but his eyes... God, his eyes were like looking into deep space. Not black pupils, but complete voids, like someone had carved out holes in his skull. She shouldn't have come here, he repeated, and I realized he wasn't talking to me. He was talking to someone else I couldn't see. Mr. Blackwood? My voice cracked like I was going through puberty again. What are you doing here? Those horrible empty sockets turned toward me, and he smiled. It was the most terrifying thing I'd ever seen. A genuine, pleased expression on a face with no eyes. Waiting, he said simply. We've all been waiting so long. We. That's when I saw them. Shadows moving in the corners, but they weren't shadows, they were people. Dozens of them in hospital gowns, all with those same black, empty eyes. Every patient who died in this room, Vernon said, his voice getting stronger. Every soul who passed between these walls. We're all here, Jessica. We never really left. I tried to back toward the door, but it slammed shut with a bang that probably woke half the floor. The lock clicked with finality. You wanted the truth, Vernon continued, taking a step closer. The room got even colder, and I could see my breath in thick clouds. The truth is that some places hold on to death. This room, there's something wrong with this space. A thin spot between worlds. The shadow patients were moving closer, reaching out with translucent hands. I could see their faces now. Old patients, young patients, kids who died way too soon, all with those horrible empty eyes. Every night at 2:17, I walk, Vernon said. Pacing, remembering, trying to hold on to what it felt like to be alive. But tonight, Jessica, tonight we have company. I fumbled for my phone, but the screen was cracked and covered in ice. The recording had stopped, battery completely drained. Electronics don't work well here, Vernon explained. The electromagnetic field is disturbed. One of the shadow patients, a young guy who couldn't have been older than me, reached out and touched my arm. His fingers were like ice, and where he touched me, my skin went completely numb. "Stay with us," he whispered. "It's peaceful here. No bills, no stress, no student loans, just the walking and the waiting." More hands reached for me, cold and desperate. I could feel them pulling at my warmth, my life. The room was spinning, and darkness crept in at the edges of my vision. That's when I remembered something from my psych rotation: how to deal with confused patients. I forced myself to look directly at Vernon, even though staring into those empty sockets made my soul want to crawl out of my body. "Mr. Blackwood," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "What year is it?" He paused, confusion flickering across his face. What year?" "You're confused, Mr. Blackwood. You died 2 years ago. You're not alive anymore. You're stuck in a loop, replaying the same night over and over. You need to let go and move on." The shadow patient stopped reaching for me, uncertainty replacing hunger in their faces. "But the walking," Vernon said, his voice suddenly weak and lost. "I have to keep walking. If I stop, I'll disappear. I'll be forgotten." "You won't be forgotten," I told him gently. "But you can't stay here. This isn't living, Mr. Blackwood. This is just existing in the spaces between heartbeats." For a moment, something changed in his face. Those empty sockets seemed less dark, and I caught a glimpse of who he'd been. A scared old man, afraid of being erased from the world. "Will anyone remember me?" he asked. "I will," I promised. "I'll remember Vernon Blackwood. I'll remember that you were here, that your life mattered." The shadows began to fade one by one. The patients looked at me with something like gratitude before dissolving into wisps of gray mist. The temperature started rising. Vernon was the last to go. As he faded, he looked almost relieved. "Thank you," he whispered. "Thank you for seeing us." And then he was gone. The door clicked open behind me, and I stumbled out into the hallway on shaking legs. When I looked back, room 209 was just a normal hospital room again. Empty, sterile, waiting. I checked my phone. Dead. According to the timestamp, I'd been in that room for less than 2 minutes, though it felt like hours. The next morning, I put in my 2 weeks' notice. Deborah didn't seem surprised. "You went into room 209, didn't you?" she asked. I nodded. "And?" "It's quiet now," I told her. "You won't have any more problems with that room." She studied my face for a long moment. then nodded. Thank you, Jessica. You're not the first nurse who tried to investigate that room, but you're the first to come out still yourself. Still myself, still human, still alive. The others became obsessed. They'd spend their whole shifts sitting outside room 209, talking to empty air, claiming they could hear voices. We had to let them go for their own safety. I left Riverside that day and transferred to a pediatric clinic across town. Nothing but healing and hope and kids getting better. But sometimes, late at night when I'm trying to sleep, I still hear them. Footsteps pacing back and forth, whispers of voices that shouldn't exist anymore. They're not in room 209 now. They're everywhere. In every hospital, every nursing home, every place where people have died and been forgotten. The difference is, now I understand what they want. They don't want to hurt anyone. They just want to be remembered. They want someone to acknowledge that they existed, that their lives had meaning, even if just for a moment. So I remember them. All of them. Vernon Blackwood, the young man who touched my arm, the children with their hollow eyes. I carry their memory, and in return, they let me sleep. Most nights. And that's the story, Nightmare Junkies. Real talk. I've never told this to anyone before tonight. But if you work in healthcare, or if you know someone who does, remember this. Our patients aren't just medical cases. They're people with stories, with fears, with hopes. Remember them. Say their names. Because somewhere, in the spaces between heartbeats, they're still walking. Still waiting. Still hoping to be remembered. All right, that's a wrap on tonight's absolute mindbender. If this story gave you chills, you know what to do. Smash that subscribe button, hit the notification bell, and become part of the Nightmare Network family. We've got so much more terrifying content coming your way. Drop a comment and let me know what you thought. Share this episode with someone who needs a good scare. And hey, if you work in a hospital and you've got your own Room 209 story, slide into our DMs. We'd love to hear from you. Until next time, this is the Nightmare Network reminding you that the scariest stories are the ones that actually happened. Keep those lights on tonight, and remember, some doors should stay locked, but some stories need to be told. Peace out, Nightmare Junkies. Sweet dreams, if you can manage them after what you just heard.